just past the first week of August 1982, and we are about to take our first cruise on the MS Bohem. Very beautiful little ship, presently docked at the great port of Miami, Dodge Island. And what we're really doing now is taking a good look at the vista, the expansive view that we see from the good ship Bohem.
It's the trouble, just of all the weight.
Oh, it's heavy, all right. But I think it's worth it.
Where do you live? Tampa. Our daughter lives in Lutz.
Oh, does she?
We live in Naples, but she lives in Lutz.
I live in Sherwood, so it's right about 10 miles from
Is it?
As you can so readily hear, the sounds of the diesel engines as they're running so close to us are eclipsing the sounds of our voices. Right now, Trudy has just acquired a couple of new friends aboard the MS Bohem, and even though the ship has not yet left port, we almost feel as if we've made friends with the passengers who will be spending the next 7 days with us. These ladies seem to be interested in our past experiences in cruising. I believe this was their very first encounter aboard the cruise ships. Just across from us, we see the Song of Norway, looking at it right now. And the Song of Norway is going to be almost our sister ship during this cruise. We'll be seeing lots of her as we go from port to port. Notice the drawbridge over there slightly to the right now. Kind of looks like the ship is empty from this vantage point, but let me say very sincerely that it was far from empty. There were several hundred passengers aboard. Just a moment ago we saw the parking lot. There it is. Our van is down there somewhere. If you look real hard, you just might find it. In fact, I might have had trouble finding it after the end of the cruise, getting my land legs back after 7 days of sea legs. Oh, it really wasn't that bad. This is kind of what people do while they're waiting for a ship to leave its port. They watch the other ships. They watch other people on other ships. Watch the cars going over the bridge. Watch the boats going under the bridge. Look at the skyline. Picked out the Miami Herald building. And above all, as we said a few moments ago, one gets to know the other passengers who are going to be one's mates for a full week. The lifeboats, as you'll see much later on, are checked each time the ship is in port, in its main port of Miami, that is. These lifeboats will hold approximately 60 passengers. There are life jackets aboard, flares, radio equipment, just about anything one might need to get assistance. And when I say the lifeboats are checked, actually the davits that lower the lifeboats are checked just as carefully. The lifeboats are actually lowered over the side while this ship is docked here in the port of Miami. All that was taken care of early in the morning. Right now, it's around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. We've taken care of all the preliminaries. We've checked in, checked out our stateroom, our cabin. Found it to be small, but not bad. After all, who stays in the cabin? It's just a place to hang one's hat, jacket. Uh-oh, it's time to eat. That's something that they do about 7 times a day at least aboard ship. Eat. eat, and eat some more. So before the Bohem even leaves the port of Miami, people are already having a good time eating. They may as well get used to it. They're going to be doing lots of it. Hello, how are you? Of course, some people are afraid they're going to get seasick, so they're going easy on the food. They're wrong. All they have to do is eat. They won't even know the ship is moving. And speaking about the ship moving, it's going to be moving very, very shortly. We'll be watching for the release of hundreds of balloons, perhaps thousands. The band will be performing out on deck, and all of us aboard the Bohem will be waving bye-bye to all of you on landside. Yes, they're having a good time already. The party has begun aboard the MS Bohem. It begins almost the moment one boards the ship, and it doesn't end practically until the last moments before disembarkation. People become different when they go on a cruise ship. All the inhibitions are left landside, and everyone just lets loose and has a great time. At least, almost everyone does. Again, we see these flags, and we'd like to tell you that the MS Bohem carries the flags of many nations. Thus, when the ship is in port for a respective country, it features the particular flag or emblem of that country. Let's see if we can find out what Mama Trudy has to say here. It's like the cruise is underway, right? Fantastic. Take a good look at Trudy now because she's nice and thin, and she's going to be thin all week long. I can just see it. Whoever said the decks are crowded on the MS Bohem, there's plenty of room. Yeah, they're all down at the lower deck where there's plenty. Okay, we're back here again, and as you could hear, the sounds surrounding us at the near top deck were quite loud and eclipsed the sounds of our voices. That'll give you some idea of what it really sounded like while we were up there. There go the balloons, and MS Bohem is underway. A great flurry. The band is playing. I don't know if we can hear much of what they're doing, but we might give it a try. All right, there they go. I don't know if we'll be able to get in close on those balloons or not. They're flying off into the horizon. Of course, the ship is moving. It's getting very breezy. Stay still right now and hold the camera. We are underway finally. Yes, we are officially underway, and our trip has now begun, and it's a time to report to our lifeboat stations, where we have, as required by U.S. Coast Guard law, we have some lifeboat drills. And of course there's nothing wrong with that, because if the Bohem were to be in danger, we would want to know how to get off the ship. But they give us a few minutes while the ship is pulling out of port to wave goodbye to loved ones ashore, take a last glimpse of the Miami and Miami Beach skylines, and say goodbye America for 7 full days. Goodbye America. We'll see you in a week. You know, it's amazing how they can take a vessel that's 500 feet long and ease it out of a little dock with such apparent ease. It's Doesn't seem to be much of a chore at all for these people. Of course, they do it every day or almost every day. Notice the various age groups aboard ship. There's white hair, there's black hair, there's red hair and blonde hair, and there's some that's bleached and some that's very, very natural. But as we observed aboard ship, the generation gap tends to dissolve, and people just relate to one another in a friendly, ship-like manner. We're all aboard the same little boat, so let's either sink or swim together and have fun. Right now, we're looking over there at the Song of Norway. This is the ship that Nunzio and Elizabeth Scordo spent a week aboard. It's owned by the Norwegian Lines, I believe. Royal Caribbean, I should say. The Norwegian Lines are the NCL people, and they own another fleet of ships. Notice all the lifeboats up near the top deck. That's called the boat deck in naval lingo. And you can be sure that those people over there on the Song of Norway, Royal Caribbean Lines, are taking a good look at those of us who are now on deck on the MS Bohem. Look at that lifeboat. I'd like to own that lifeboat. Beautiful. Not the one there, but the one on the right. Yes, it is the Song of Norway. And she'll be coming up right behind us. We'll be seeing lots of her during the days ahead. Miami's skyline still there in the distance. Waters are calm. Sun is shining. Stiff to light breeze. And we're going to be seeing lots of these small vessels coming close to our ship, taking a look at us while we take a look at them and photograph them. And their size in relationship to the MS Bohem is minuscule, to be sure. The ship is only going something like 3 to 5 miles an hour at this point. Of course, they measure mileage in knots when you're aboard ship, but yours truly finds it much easier to relate to miles per hour. So we're going about 5 miles per hour. You could probably walk almost as fast as the ship is moving right now, and certainly you could run that fast without any trouble at all. You wouldn't last as long. Notice how people are watching the other ship. There's a fellow with a Norwegian Caribbean Line t-shirt. Uh-oh, I think we're going by the Norway now. Yes, this is the Norway, friends. The biggest ship afloat. She's #1 in the world today. You're looking at the Norway. And she is owned by the NCL, the Norwegian Caribbean Lines. This is the ship that has nightclubs, Broadway shows, sidewalk cafes, shopping centers, gymnasium, several swimming pools, and it breaks down a lot. And yet the people still are game enough to climb aboard the SS Norway. She's so big that there are many ports that she cannot dock at. She has to stay out in the bay or in the Gulf, and people have to be transported by smaller landing craft. Look at the size of the Norway, the biggest ship afloat. Tremendous. And there's our NCL T-shirt wearer still looking at the ship that bears the same insignia over there, the SS Norway. There's a man from the crew in center screen right now. He's doing what has to be done once the ship leaves port. There are many, many chores that the crew must tend to when leaving port. One wonders what the crew has to do, but we saw them constantly on the move, painting, scraping, checking, coiling up rope. It's just about time for our lifeboat drill, and many people already have their life jackets on. The crew members are frantically admonishing us to go get our life jackets and put them on. Please don't let the red of the sky fool you. It didn't look so ominous and threatening when we were actually experiencing this trip. Not everybody goes in the swimming pool. Some people prefer to just lie about, soak up the sunshine, and get used to shipboard life, which is what some of them are doing right now. As we say, they're all different generations. Here's Jim. Hello, Jim.
Carson, you can throw him in.
Yes.
You're a mean old man.
I know. I'm a mean daddy, aren't I?
Terrible.
He found me here one time when I went out playing with the little railroad from that phone.
Did you? Well, like the girl said, you swing up and down. You don't swing back and forth.
You had on the
You did? Oh.
You should have taken your glasses off. They look better.
I look like
Somebody ought to take a picture of you. I should have had my camera.
Why don't you take a picture of me?
Take a picture of him, Hold on.
Now she's filming. It's on go now. You see that little red light going, Jim?
Yes.
You see that little red light?
Yes.
You see that? When that red light is flashing off and on, we're going on television. They're going to see us all across Naples, Florida.
That's wonderful.
My mother, my father, my son, my aunts, my uncles, they're all going to see you on television.
Is that right?
And you want to say hello?
Hello there. Yeah, we're enjoying ourselves on the Bohem. MS.
MS. You know what MS means in Yiddish? It means the truth.
True.
That's right. So it means you're saying the truth.
Right.
This is MS Bohem. And we have a very...
My pleasure meeting
My
you.
pleasure, as they say in French.
I'll something.
Is that the way they say it in French? See, I didn't know what the French said. How we look, Judy? We look...
How about a 16-month contract?
I don't...
Renewal. Right?
Renewable by each day, because by the end of the day I'm shot, right?
You think we should hire the cameraman too?
I think the videographer is the best one out of the bunch.
I think so. She's a good looking one.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Take this picture. Look at that profile.
Maybe I should, you know, if I was a...
Yeah, wait a minute. He's got to
be a
have
movie star. Now, how's this?
Good.
Does that look professional?
You got nothing.
Hi.
Now start.
Okay, Jim's learning his business in a hurry. He's watching for the red light. Do you think people really want to watch us sitting here? All we're going to do is make them jealous. That's all we're going to do. I don't think we should make other people jealous. This is a good picture to watch next winter when it's about 40 degrees outside.
That's right. When you have to put a blanket over, then now's the time. Get something. You're going to get a turnaround and get the pool and come back to him.
He gets enough of me.
I think so.
See, now if I leave home, you can watch me.
Well, once again, we see how rough that water can really be. That water was really rough. I swam in there, and let me tell you that the wide open oceans are not much rougher. Okay. Here's a group called the Trade Winds, and the Trade Winds are a very talented married couple from the east coast of Florida, live right on 84 as a matter of fact, Alligator Alley. And Joy plays drums and sings, and Reggie plays piano. He sings like a southerner, and he plays the bass pedals with his feet. So they're quite a duo, and they were very popular aboard ship, not just because of their excellent music, which it really was. It was excellent, but they were very popular because they were popular people. They were nice people. They were very pleasant people to be with. So maybe we ought to take a sample of what the Trade Winds, Reggie and Joy, are all about. Let's listen to them. Well, some people can sleep through anything, friends, and this couple, believe it or not, is relatively newlyweds, and they are relatively newlyweds, I should say, and they are enjoying the relaxation that's connected with a trip to the Caribbean. And even this young lady is taking advantage of the salt air, sunshine, Dominican Republic. Actually, it's the Dominican Republic, or Dominica. And it is really not quite so pink as it appears, but the color camera, or the color sensing unit of our camera, sensed it this way at this early hour of the morning. There's just one lone pilot who manages to guide the cruise ships and passenger ships into the port of Puerto Plata, and we are now getting a true feel for the Caribbean. Here we see a fort, which seems to be a commonplace thing at the harbor entranceways to these various Caribbean islands. There's the pilot. See the big P on the flag, and he's going out perhaps to escort another cruise ship in. I think the Norway is just behind us, so we might be seeing them very, very soon. Taxi cabs, sightseeing personnel are getting their instructions, getting all lined up by the dockside in anticipation of our coming off ships that will be taking the Bohem passengers.
Mr. Frank Roberts, first office, please, immigration.
Now we get somewhat of an overview of what the Dominican Republic is all about. Remember, this is early in the morning. It is very early in the morning, and the community has not yet begun to pursue its chores of the day. But one's first impression of Puerto Plata is a sleepy Caribbean community, perhaps back in time compared to the good old USA. Perhaps a little more on the slow side, moving more mañana-like than we move. But a certain island quaintness to it, quaintness and beauty. Mother Nature in all her glories abounding here. And one can't help but feel that this surely is not the USA, and one is right, this is not the USA. Many official types parading about. There's the Song of Norway. We promised you that we'd be seeing her as she follows just behind us. And the pilot is just leaving her right at this moment, or a few moments ago, I should say. Notice the diesel smoke spewing out of her chimney. And still the sightseeing personnel wait for us to disembark. Actually, we are still waiting for clearance. We're waiting for clearance. There's Trudy. She's looking out on the shore, longingly, hoping that soon we will be getting our instructions to prepare to disembark. But it's just interesting to, even from our vantage point, watch the goings-on here at dockside. Sightseeing buses, cabs, all lining up in anticipation of several hundred people coming off the ship.
Melda, why you so nasty? Why you keep yourself so untidy as you wake in the morning?
Song of Norway is a beautiful ship too. Nowhere near as impressive as the Norway herself, but still quite a nice ship. Nunzio enjoyed his stay there. There's the fort that we saw on the way into port. Notice how the sightseeing vans are starting to pull in at the pier. Sun is starting to come up. The city of Puerto Plata is momentarily going to come awake, alive, especially with several hundred tourists walking the streets or riding through the streets, visiting the markets, as we're going to be doing in a little while. Kind of beautiful in its own simplistic way. One can't help but notice that the standard of living here at Puerto Plata is not of the highest. Certainly better than its sister country on the same island, Haiti. Haiti is adjoining the Dominican Republic, as you probably know. Here we take a nice pan and overview of the shoreline, noticing that some of the homes are barely homes. They're more aptly described as sheds and shacks, but they are called home by the natives of this small island nation. The horse or donkey seems to be a favorite mode of transportation, as gas here is very expensive and owning a vehicle is likewise prohibitively expensive. Notice now how more people are coming out to the streets. There's some horses coming down the street, and horses seem to be a very popular mode of transportation, as we noted just a minute or two ago. In fact, we saw a man park his horse and took a picture of it right in a parking space in town, just as one would park a car right by, I don't know if it was a metered parking area, but it was right in the center of the downtown area. As a matter of fact, it was right by the rum distillery. Poor horse. Well, look at this horse. He's going to be getting his morning walk or ride or whatever, but he's getting his morning exercise.
Oops. And the horse is going into a nice trot. Slowing down, just like people like to do in the tropics, speeding up occasionally. Meeting the neighbors, wishing them a good morning, and what I guess is Creole. They speak some English here.
Well, that wasn't quite right, because the language of Santo Domingo, or the Dominican Republic rather, is Spanish, but Creole is the national language, at least the unofficial national language, French being the official language of the neighboring island nation of Haiti. But Spanish seems to be the predominant language of the people here in the Dominican Republic. Quite a ship, isn't she? You can't appreciate the immensity of these craft unless you are 50 or 100 feet or 200 feet away and take a good look at them. When you're aboard them, you don't realize the size of them, except when you get lost and trying to find something about 4 levels up or down. Then you know how large they really are, especially if the elevators aren't handy or aren't working. I said one of the favorite pastimes of people aboard ship is to stare at people aboard other ships. In lieu of that, a favorite pastime is to stare at people at the docks. And one of the favorite pastimes of people at the docks is to stare at people who are aboard ships. In other words, people like to look at people. Don't you sit at an airport and just watch people for perhaps hours on end? Well, that's what these people are really doing. Uh-oh, it's time for Trudy's exercise class. Okay, Trudy, take over. Well, you see what her husband does. He just stands there, or sits there rather, and gives instructions and laughs. He was really a great guy. That's Jim. And Jim is kind of making fun of his wife, Ann, but they're really a lovely couple. Delightful people. And they were having a good time there. Even though they didn't get too much exercise, they certainly had a lot of fun. And everybody on deck was watching. Even people on the upper decks were looking down at Trudy and Ann and their friends attempting to exercise on this ship that was not exactly very stable. Trudy's going to do her leg bends now, but she's all done with her exercise, and it's time for some socializing, some shipboard conviviality. So Right now they're having a nice conversation. We'd love to pick up on that conversation, but the wind is blowing so strongly that there will be little of the conversation picked up by our on-camera microphone. So we can't pick that up. We just tried to pick up some of it, but it's really not discernible. Now we're doing what is called shooting at the clay pigeons, trap shooting, skeet shooting, whatever it's called. The crew member launches those clay pigeons and people take shots at them. And meanwhile, through it all, through all the shotgun shooting, Reggie goes on with his singing, and Joy with her singing, and Jack with his clarinet playing. It just goes on and on and on. Jim is looking out towards the sun and the clouds and the sea, as we all are, taking in this vast expanse of water and land. The islands just being a small outcropping from tremendous mountains that exist under the water. This was a rainbow that we tried so hard to capture on videotape. And that's what the wake of a cruise ship looks like, quite turbulent. Notice the color of the water, which is quite representative of how it really looked. It's kind of a Pacific blue, a blue that almost matches our carpet here in the family room. In fact, we could use some of that Caribbean water here right now. It would make a nice match. Put some of that in the pool. It would blend beautifully with the furniture and the shelving and the general decor. Once again, we are awed by this magnificent rainbow, and I might add, parenthetically, in fact I see a dot of water on the lower left-hand side of the lens. Didn't notice that before, but I see it there now. I might add, parenthetically, that rainbows are not uncommon as one traverses the Caribbean. It was not unusual to see these manifestations of good old Mother Nature. And there's another manifestation, an island abruptly rising out of the water, steep cliffs preventing one from gaining easy access to the land above. And here's Jim's wife, Ann, and I think they're talking, but I don't know if we can hear them. We'll try. Discussion seems to be about rings, and it's one of those discussions that is difficult to pick up with the ambient noise of the engines and the sea combined. So it's not very easy to pick up some of these conversations. We keep seeing land as we head out into the Caribbean. And we keep thinking, well, this is it. We're getting close. But then we keep seeing more land, more islands, actually, and more rainbows. But perhaps that's one of the joys of cruising, is to look out the stern of the ship, see the rainbow, see the islands that we passed a few minutes ago, see islands that were in the distant horizon an hour before that, and look at the homes on these very small islands and speculate and ponder about the kinds of people who would call this home. just a few acres of land in the sea, steep hillsides, land that doesn't grow any crops, land where water is often difficult, if not impossible to find, that is, fresh potable water. And one wonders about the special type of people who call the Caribbean their home. Some of them are transplanted Americans, I might add. Again, look at the rainbow in the horizon. We are so awed by these manifestations of nature. And here's a manifestation of human ingenuity. The Norway is alongside us, thank goodness a few hundred feet away from us. But even at a few hundred feet, one cannot deny that she is a most impressive feat of human ingenuity. We're both coming into St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. The Virgin Islands are U.S. territories, and they take on much more of a U.S. flavor than the Dominican Republic and Haiti would. And that's because of obvious reasons. They have representation in Congress, although I don't believe they have any voting rights. But they are represented and their interests are represented. And the language spoken is predominantly English, although there is some Pidgin English spoken here. The Norway will not be able to dock here at St. Thomas. It will remain out in the bay where people will board Bahamarama landing ships and will commute back and forth to shore. Our ship, on the other hand, is heading into port. It will dock right in town. In fact, we will be able to walk from our ship, if we wish, to the center of town. And as a matter of fact, we do walk from the center of town back to the Bohem. What we're looking now is the city of, I believe it's pronounced Charlotte-Ami, something like that, but that's downtown St. Thomas right there. As our guide tells us in a few minutes, there are so many stores in the downtown shopping area that you could be in town for a full week and not ever see all that there is to see just in the downtown area of St. Thomas. As you probably know, there are 3 major islands that are under American jurisdiction, and St. Thomas is one of the most popular ones. There's St. Croix and one other one which eludes me at this particular moment. There's one of those Bahamarama landing ships taking the people from the large, immense Norway into the port. Notice that the bay is not cluttered with nautical activity, although when we get close to the dock itself, we will see a preponderance of yachts of all sizes and shapes, fishing boats and the like, docked there. But as far as actual activity in the bay and in the surrounding Caribbean waters, no. There's very, very little activity and evidence at this point. One of the large resort buildings at the Virgin Islands still have a drop of water on the lower left-hand part of our lens. There are some beautiful and expensive homes on St. Thomas. You'll hear our guide telling you later, or telling us later, that water is a problem and water must be purchased if it cannot be captured from rainfall. Most homes have what is called a cistern, and the rain runs off the roof, down the spouts, and into cisterns that hold upward of 60 to 90,000 gallons of water.
are born Creole, got their rhythm in their soul when they move their hips in a funny way. Dance all night and sleep all day, then they start a polishing.
We were both very impressed with the port and the city and the island, and one can't help but be impressed with all of this. It's very beautiful. There we have it, St. Thomas. There's the sign. Maybe we can pick up some sound now. Oh, it's still quite breezy and windy there, and difficult to hear what I was saying as I was capturing all this on film. There's another one of those ubiquitous forts. I said you see a fort at the entranceway to virtually every one of these Caribbean ports. And we take another look at the Norway, and believe me, one cannot possibly ever see all there is to see on just this one ship. There is so much to know about her, so much to see, and she remains, even at this point, very vivid in our mind's eye. Okay, there we are once again watching some of the passengers of the Norway, speaking about the Norway, being transported back and forth to the mainland, which of course is an island anyhow. Maybe this was part of the fun for the people who cruised aboard the Norway. They could get these little ferry boat rides back and forth all day long. We enjoyed being able to get off the ship and step right on good terra firma. Oh, the living is wonderful in St. Thomas. The climate is even all year round. Temperature never goes much below 65 or much above 85, and when you go up on the mountaintops, about 3,500 feet up above sea level, it's a cool, comfortable 75 or 80 degrees throughout the warm summer months. Of course, they never have any frosts. They have very little good growing soil there. It's mostly like a volcanic rock. And although the climate is right, the local plant enthusiasts say it's very difficult to grow food crops. Thus, a lot of the food that is eaten on St. Thomas comes from adjacent islands such as Jamaica, and perhaps from the Dominican Republic, although they don't grow too much there. This I captured on film because I thought it was a rather interesting commentary about people. They must exercise their right to graffiti no matter what. And here they insisted upon inscribing the names of the various ships, probably ships that they were aboard. And people painted graffiti on top of graffiti on top of graffiti, and the result is an almost abstract hodgepodge of letters and writing and numbers of all sorts and inscriptions and symbols. But there's little in the way of law enforcement here, so those who choose to exercise their right to paint graffiti proceed to do so unmolested by law enforcement officials. Still adds a little color to the island, where you see some of these ship names inscribed on the pier and dock. You'll notice that St. Thomas does not have the rather decrepit 50-year-old, 100 years back in time look of the Dominican Republic. It is certainly a more American-oriented culture, and this is manifested in the streets, vehicles, the lifestyle of the people, And yet, the Caribbean influence manifests itself in the form of the mañana attitude. People move rather slowly. People seem to enjoy their lives. Here you see one of the dockside crew people pulling in our ship, helping us get docked so we can leave the ship, which of course most people are most anxious to do by this point. Notice the shopping center with an easy view, an easy walk, or easy ride. It was actually an easy walk of the dock. They wanted to be sure that coming and going, the Yankee dollars were spent, and spent in big numbers. It must be going back to pick up more because it looks kind of empty now, so it probably just deposited some passengers on shore and back to the ship to pick up some more shoppers. And that's what they do here in St. Thomas. You know, this is supposed to be one of those excellent shopping areas, and there are many bargains in the downtown area, and you can probably bargain with the bargains and get better bargains. Good place, they say, to buy rum and other alcoholic type beverages. Here are those little boats we mentioned before. Of course, you'll have U.S. Customs here because of the nature of the island. It is an American possession. Now the sightseeing vans and buses, just as they were in the country of the Dominican Republic, they're getting all lined up and getting ready for the onrush of tourists coming in from both the Norway and the Bohem, which we are on. Still, the guides and taxi cab drivers move at a much slower pace than they would in New York City. The sun is coming up. Traffic is starting to increase. And the city will gradually become its bustling self. But up in the hills and the mountains, outside of the downtown area, quietude will prevail. Ships of many nations do come to St. Thomas. It is one of the favorite ports in the Caribbean, possibly because it is a safe port. It's an easy port to get into and out of. Although it's kind of shallow, it cannot accommodate the Norway. They assure us in another year or two they better accommodate the Norway, or it will not be docking there any longer. Our crew people are getting busy now. Docking is always a busy time for those aboard the Bohem. Some of these young fellows look as if they should still be in high school, and some of them are probably in that age bracket. They come from many countries of the free world, including Asia, South America.
big building that is in front of us, that's a federal building where you find the district court, immigration, and other offices. The next one there, that's the legislature of the Virgin Islands. We have 15 senators that run the Virgin Islands, governor and lieutenant governor. 7 senators from St. Croix, 7 from St. Thomas, and 1 from St. John. They all work together there in that green building. Then the one beside it, the red one, we call that Fort Christian. The first Danish settlers came to these islands, that's where they stayed, in the old fort there. It was built in 1671. It's the oldest building in St. Thomas. That red building that you see there.
Still in use?
Yes, sir. Right now is the fire building there. A little part of it too is a museum by the roadside. So, say the museum, the jail, and the fire station right now used there. And we are going all our way up to the top of the mountain where you see that covered with snow up there, like not snow but haze. He was born on the island of Haiti. This island here, this island belongs to Puerto Rico. So it comes from Spanish, his descendants is Spanish. So we call him Juan Louis. That's supposed to be John Lewis. You'll find people, you'll find some of us who speak, another language like Papiamento, Patois, and French and Spanish. You'll hear a few people as you go along speak Papiamento dialects. But the main language is so on. The town is very small. We started it from where you asked me about the plane, about transportation, and it nearly ends. It ends by about the bank down here it ends. But you can shop for a whole week here, and no way you're going to get into all of those stores. Too many of them, all between the little alleys all over the place. A lot of Indian, Arabs, and continental stores. The town ends about here on the main street. So the next block, which is to my right, is the main street.
Where's the store called the Bolero?
Right on the main street. I'll drop you off there maybe when I get back.
Oh, good.
And right across here, this is the Greenwood Passage Hotel. Now, you asked me about, this is one of the boats that will take you to Tortola, the British Virgin Islands. We have a lot of them coming here and they take you to the different islands. So we have boat and planes. Across from our right over there, that's an old rumstead. Old plane crashed with him behind over there a few years ago.
I didn't know that.
Yes. Yeah, he first started the airline. It's not easy to dig a grave 6 feet down. Too expensive.
Well, in Galveston, near where we come from, it's because of the high tides.
Yes, you have water in New Orleans and
they
so
will
on.
wash up.
Yeah, in New Orleans you do the same thing. Yeah. You see, look on the side over there. You see all in the hillsides. There's no landslide, so you could build a house any place. Be good passenger. That's the Virgin Island Hotel, the big one up there, Virgin Island Hotel.
Economically, it's doing better.
I believe so. I don't hear any complaints.
It's still open, huh?
Yes, in operation right now. As we end that subject, as you look across over there, by the big building, we call over there the Tower Apartments. Here on the island, that is one of our problems. We don't have sufficient water, so. But when the cisterns, when there are no rain and the cisterns are empty, we buy water from the government. The water is not expensive, but to transport it, to get it up to the different houses.
What is your average 2-bedroom condominium sell for?
Most of these condominiums start from around $150,000 up. To get cheaper. I'm not sure really nowadays with the rates how they're running. I have a new
actually watch the planes taking off and landing below us. It is quite a phenomenon to see the planes below you taking off and landing.
Coming back to that beach, you're going to turn to that island. When you get back down to town and you look across to your right over here, you see that antenna, that TV antenna. So when you see the antenna on the peak of the mountain here, you know you was right up by the antenna. There's channel 10. This antenna, that's where the ladies get the love of life, Secret Storm, Young and the Restless. See them at 5 o'clock running home as if they're mad. And this one over here, public TV antenna, where the kids get the Sesame Street and all that stuff. I would like to take you down below, but I guess down there is all filled up now, so I'll drop you out on top of here, and you go down, you take about 20 minutes.
Okay, how many feet above sea level is this? 1,800? 1,800 feet? 1,500. Oh, there's a marker over there? I know this is the highest point on the island, isn't it?
And it's closer today, so you can see the underground island up there. Those islands is a British island. British government. For British and they all over there. Some nobody lives on them like that side.
And this is where they come in to get those famous British, rather banana daiquiris with a British twist. And this is where people come to get out of the sun, cool off, and take in the view while taking in some liquid refreshment. And this is where they come in to get those famous British, rather banana daiquiris with a British twist. And this is where people come to get out of the sun, cool off, and take in the view while taking in some liquid refreshment. down the mountain, and it's every bit as precarious and hairpin turnish as it looks. It's quite an experience just coming down this mountain, believe me. Meanwhile, our guide is explaining some of the things that we're seeing, and some kind of an old jitney bus seems to be right in front of us.
If you're going to build a house here, you prepare for that. So there's no problem. Prepare, to solve your water problem, and you don't really waste it. And the mountain here, the French people who live on this side, most of them go to this church. The cathedral is on the main street in town. And we have most of the different denominations here. We even have the second oldest synagogue in the Western Hemisphere. The oldest one is in Curacao, and we have the second one here. It's on the back street, very close to where you shop. So if you want to see it, have all the sand on the floor and so on, you just ask any taxi driver, anybody, where the synagogue is, and they show you. Now, it's in walking distance, just a few small churches like these Christian Mission, Baptist, or what you call them. They are the ones who really are making it now. More people are going to those churches than the Catholic, the Anglican, and the Methodist. I guess you get more action there, more dancing and so on. I don't know, I don't know. Maybe I have a minister here, so I have to watch out.
Real combination. Give it a different color. Let's make it.
I'll take one over this.
We don't go, very few natives go over to those islands. We never go over there. People torch them. People never get it.
Now, you see Red Sea back there? Red Sea was built in place of
The famous spot where navigator explorer Drake would actually sit and watch the ships out in the islands or traversing between the islands. This was Drake's actual seat, and surprisingly people are still allowed to sit in it. I would think it would get worn out from tens of thousands of tourists using it, but no, they allow us to use it, and we did sit in it and experience the same view that Sir Francis Drake experienced hundreds of years ago. Trudy, checking everything out. Oh, be careful. Somebody's video equipment just went down. Hi, Trudy. Trudy, you want to sit where Francis Drake sat? You're going to do what Drake did. You're going to sit and watch the ships come in the harbor. Your stomach. Okay, our tour of the island is now over, and we are back on ship once again, taking in a more or less midday, mid-afternoon view of the harbor at St. Thomas. We have walked a long distance back to our ship and experienced some of the walking sites, ground level sites as it were, that one can experience on a Caribbean island. As usual, most yachts and sailing vessels of a pleasure type are anchored and docked. They don't spend too much time out in the open waters. Yet, just seeing these small vessels at anchor in the bay is in itself a very gratifying, very pleasant sight. There's the government building we're looking at, where the federal government takes care of the affairs of the Virgin Islanders in general. I think if we watch carefully, before long we'll be seeing a dog enjoying the pleasures of speedboating. There was one out there in this bay. Again, notice how little activity there is in the actual water area itself. Most of the activity seems to be on land. There are our crew members once again doing all those in-port repairs that they always seem to be working upon. Seem to be no end to the equipment that had to be maintained and repaired by the Bohem's crew. There's the dog we were mentioning. This, I don't know if you can even see him, but there's a dog in the speedboat. How much is that doggy in the speedboat, eh? Water looks beautifully blue, relatively unpolluted. There's all the graffiti that we showed you earlier from close up.
Oh yeah, join the bamboo dance, hold on, you can take the chance. Oh yeah, join the bamboo dance, hold on, you can take the chance. In the middle of the night, somebody went and doused out the light. Everybody holding their pose, started to rub one another nose. The whole lady said,
well, long after we arrived at St. Thomas, we were still awed and impressed by its scenic, breathtaking beauty, especially from the mountaintop. Wasn't that beautiful up there? And you see the Norway still riding at anchor beyond the harbor, beyond the port. Its passengers, there they are in the small craft on the right, being ferried back and forth constantly all day long. This is almost like looking at pictures in the National Geographic, and I think some of these views that we are seeing right now have appeared in fairly recent editions of the National Geographic magazine.
She said this rhythm for two, I love the rhythm from this here bamboo. This rhythm just make me feel glad. It remind me of me days down in Trinidad. Then the old lady then start to shake and twist in her body room like a snake. And what she said, oh yeah, tiny bamboo dance, hold on, you can take.
Our ship, the MS Bohem, is preparing to remove the anchor from the Bay of St. Thomas and set sail for its next destination. Radar already revolving in motion, engines starting to fire up, and there's Jack Ellis. Hello, Jack. How are you doing? Jack is going to be talking to Trudy before too long. There's one of our anchors already in place out of the water. And we'll be sending audio signals, smokestack signals as it were, to the pilot, captain, crew of the Norway momentarily. We are underway, as you can see. We are underway, and we're going to be sailing very, very close to the gigantic floating city known as the Norway. There's the diesel fuel coming out of our smokestacks, indicating that we are setting sail. We are leaving port. It's time to be moving on, and we shall remember St. Thomas for many, many, many years to come, especially through these videotape pictures and through the still pictures that we exposed during the hours we spent in this beautiful area of the world. If we listen, we might ultimately hear some communication between the Bohem and the Norway. This is typical for these ships. There we go. Let's hear that.
How's that for a set of horns?
They're talking to each other.
Yes, the Norway is pulling its anchor. One of the people just said to us they're pulling their anchor, and we wondered why all the water was coming out of the Norway. The reason the water was coming out is because they use the water as a lubricant so that the anchor slides in very smoothly. I thought that was very clever. We are having a little trouble with our original videotape here, so you will see some jumping of the picture. This was why we stopped using this tape right at this point. We exposed a few more feet of it, and then we switched to another video cassette. We were having technical difficulties at this point. If the networks can have technical difficulties and get away with it, well, we figure the Kleiners can have their own little minor technical difficulties and get away with them too. So we wanted to show you how these little Bahamarama landing craft come close to the mothership, take the passengers off and on, and ferry them back and forth, and you really get a good view of that here. Our crewmen are hard at work getting things tidied up after leaving the port of St. Thomas. And momentarily I think we'll be seeing our friend Jack Ellis in some sort of conversation with Trudy. Again, we are having technical difficulties with the cassette tape, which is precisely why it will be ending shortly, and we'll be editing another tape immediately thereafter. Without these problems, we don't have any insert that says standby network feed problem, so we just have to make believe it's the network having a feed problem.
Right into the
The sun is around to the west. There's Jack Ellis. There he is.
That's the way, that's the way to go. But she's happy she's coming on. It's her birthday that week anyway. So it'll be
I think she's going to be on.
Yeah.
So that would be nice.
I'm looking forward to it. I really miss her and the kids. I won't see
kids coming too?
I won't see the kids till I get home. But at least I get a little break and I get a chance to see her.
Yeah. Well, that'll give you someone to do something good.
Yeah, and Debbie told me she's going to lighten up on my schedule for me that week so that I can spend a lot of time.
Isn't that nice?
Oh, yeah, they're real nice, and they spent all expense paid by the company, too. They're picking up the whole tab.
Well, you know what? It doesn't cost them anything to feed them.
No.
Because the food is here, and it's a part
But she gets to go on all the tours. That can add up to
She gets the tours at no charge?
Yeah, their company's paying for it. They're going to put her on his crew staff.
I see.
That way, nobody can legally have anything to holler about. If she comes on as a passenger, then she'd have to finesse.
And we welcome you to beautiful downtown Old San Juan, Puerto Rico. Buenos dias, señores y señoritas, muchachos y muchachas. Puerto Rico could very well become America's 51st first state. It is a nation of proud people of very mixed ancestry, some of them being Spanish, some of them being African in origin, and many of them being of combined bloodlines. Old San Juan, which we're looking at now from our vantage point aboard ship, is much like it was 400 years ago. It's next to one other city in the whole hemisphere, the oldest city in the entire region, that is, in the entire hemisphere. It has been restored, that is, the people have taken it upon themselves to restore the architecture to its original grandeur, so there's a lot of Mediterranean and Spanish influence here. The streets are narrow, much like they are in Western Europe. In fact, we felt as if we were back in Western Europe from time to time. However, our video camera, because of the dampness, did not function when we were walking the downtown streets. Consequently, the footage we're looking at right now was totally taken from the disadvantage point of the MS Bohem. It was taken on the water. However, we capture a little bit of the flavor of San Juan. Now that's a problem. You have to get those barnacles off the side of the ship, friends, otherwise you're in real big trouble. So these two fellas have a deal going with the Norwegian Caribbean lines, and you see every time a ship comes into port, they get out the scrapers, get out their little raft, and they work away. It's scraping off the barnacles and cleaning the sides of the ships. The ship you're looking at right now was our home last summer, 1981. We cruised to the Bahamas and to Haiti, to an out island, and to Jamaica aboard that ship. And it was a very delightful cruise. Now we're looking at some of New San Juan. And New San Juan is a very modern, cosmopolitan city. We drove through the city, and the traffic jams were very much akin to what one would experience in beautiful downtown Big Apple, New York City.
Then I feel I cannot bear. If I could relive that fateful day, I would not turn my love away. I reveal how I do adore her.
There we are. There's the Starward. Great little ship. We love the Starward too. And these fellows, I don't know how many hours they did this, but they worked very hard and very long to clean the side of the Starward. We did see a topless ice show in downtown San Juan, and we went to the gambling casino there. We didn't gamble, but for maybe $1 or $2's worth of dimes and nickels or quarters. You couldn't seem to get near the dime machines. They were the busiest machines. We also had the pleasure of visiting the rainforest on this island, where the temperature dropped to a very comfortable 70 degrees or below. And our guide was most helpful in explaining all the customs and traditions and ways of life that are peculiar to the island of Puerto Rico. Puerto, of course, means port, and Rico means rich. However, the average citizen in Puerto Rico is anything but rich. On the other hand, a middle-class community seems to be evolving as the businesses come from the mainland, electronic businesses, manufacturing. And as this happens, agriculture is diminishing, and industry is on the rise. A trip through the metropolitan area of San Juan makes it very evident that this is a rapidly burgeoning, fast-growing area, and it has a very bright future, especially after the island becomes America's 51st state. There are ferry boats plying the waters between the various parts of the island, and people commute to work in little ferry boats, and as you can notice and see, some of them commute to work in, well, I don't know what she's commuting to work in. She's commuting on the, she's not even working. I don't know how she got in there anyhow. Wow. Well, as we were saying, they park their cars in the same types of garages that they have at in the Big Apple in New York City and Chicago or any other major American metropolis. So even when a ship is in port, not everybody chooses to walk up and down the streets and buy T-shirts and rum. Some of them stay aboard ship and talk and make love and eat. We all do that 7 times a day on the Bohem, and drink and share secrets that no one else will ever know. Secrets that will probably be forgotten 2 or 3 days from now, but secrets which at this moment have a special significance. Oh, she said, I forgot it already. What did I want to say to you? Downtown Old San Juan is kind of a mañana place. Oh yes, the traffic is somewhat congested here and there, but basically people take life on the easy side. She just remembered what she wanted to say to him, but he doesn't believe it. Meanwhile, getting a suntan is much more important than buying the best rum at the best possible prices. We mentioned these ferry boats to you before, and here is the Gustavo something or other ferrying office workers, retail clerks, back and forth across the bay. Sure beats getting hung up in a 4-lane traffic jam on the Long Island Expressway, doesn't it?
Solo va el ritmo del cha-cha-cha. Solo va el ritmo del cha-cha-cha. Solo va el ritmo del cha-cha-cha.
Well, I think that our visit to Puerto Rico is coming to an all too hasty conclusion. I mentioned earlier that the video equipment shut down automatically because of the high moisture content that was building up there, and so we missed out on a prime opportunity to obtain some excellent footage. However, we do have quite a few 35mm still shots showing the narrow streets and the mañana atmosphere here. Even though this is an American city, it's still very, very Mediterranean in its outlook and its traditions, its lifestyles. Although English is spoken in Puerto Rico, most Puerto Ricans pride themselves in being highly bilingual. They speak fairly good English and excellent Spanish. They have a daily newspaper which is totally in English, but they have another daily newspaper which is totally in Spanish. If you're going to live in Puerto Rico, you had better decide to be bilingual. And they tell us you shouldn't get too hung up about your lack of knowledge of Spanish, because the Puerto Ricans quickly acclimate you to their way of speaking so that you soon understand what they're saying and are able to converse with them. Here goes another one of those ferry boats. They seem to be plying the waters all day long, because I guess people come to work at all different hours, and people are let out of work at odd hours in Puerto Rico. Quite an impressive port. We came into Puerto Rico late in the evening. It was totally dark. So now as we're leaving the island, we are able to get a much better perspective of what it looks like. And that's what these young gals are doing. They're out there getting a good perspective of the Puerto Rican shoreline. This seems to be a municipal park of sorts. As you notice, our ship is moving at an extremely lazy pace, probably 3 knots, 4 knots, very, very slow. And we are grateful for this, because we're able to take in the sights, the sounds of the city as we glide by ancient streets in an ancient city. Look at that wall. I don't know if you saw that or not. There was a gigantic wall which is several hundred years old. Old San Juan is completely encased. There's a view of the wall. The old city is completely encased in a wall that is several feet thick. The Spaniards, it appears, felt that the city should be impregnable. It should not be vulnerable. And to make it totally defendable, they built this very thick wall around the entire old city. And the wall was built so well that even until this day, we still have almost a complete encirclement of the old city several hundred years later. Isn't that interesting? Notice the architecture. Some of it is old. Some of it is relatively recent, but designed to complement the initial efforts of the builders of this next to oldest city in the hemisphere. As usual, and as we said earlier in this adventure, there's always a fortress. Always a fortress. They never wanted to let people into these places. And I don't think they got out after they got in, especially if they got you in that fortress. Notice how thick the wall is when you look inside the turrets. Some of our cruise mates actually toured this fortress. We didn't get a chance to include this in our itinerary, but they tell us that it was indeed several feet thick and indeed just about impregnable. So the next time we go back to San Juan, we're going to have to see if we can take a tour of the fort. Okay, you give me your address, I'll give you mine. And when you come to town, call me up. Where are we now? We're having, I believe, the captain's dinner. Let's find out. Well, that surely isn't the captain's dinner. That's the captain's swimming pool, because we did see the captain swimming in it, and the waters of the Caribbean must be relatively calm this day, because if you notice, there isn't too much activity in the pool itself. Well, we're back at sea, and we are now headed for Cap Haitian, Haiti. So we'll be seeing some of the island of Puerto Rico as we wend our way to the west and to the north. You really learn your geography when you spend a week on a cruise ship, and you certainly learn your east from your west and your north from your south if you never knew that before. This gentleman is learning that the water in the swimming pool is slightly cold, but just nothing but pure Caribbean seawater. That's all that's in that pool. It's filtered through a very primitive filter, and it's pumped out and exchanged regularly. Right now, we're going to be taking a tour of the captain's bridge, the navigation bridge. This is where the assistant to the captain, probably his mate, will speak to us, tell us all about the nature of the ship, how it functions, the various equipment that is involved in keeping the ship on the straight and narrow and keeping us on course. It's really a very interesting tour, and he did give us a good explanation of it. Unfortunately, our on-camera microphone was not always on the captain's assistant, so we didn't always get all the data that he was imparting to us, but you'll catch some of it, I think.
Stan is running around the ship all the time, but if you stay still for 10 minutes you will pass by, that's for sure. That's the only way to find it. This ship was built in Finland 14 years ago. Do you know where Finland is? Okay, I am from Sweden, neighbor country. It was built for a Swedish ship owner. He built it for his daughter. She was a young girl at that time, and she wanted a cruise ship. And she kept it for 13 years and sold it last year to a Finnish company for $14 million, and it was all paid for. So she made a good job. It's 440 feet long, 65 feet wide, and 117 feet high. The draft when we are running in the water is 19 feet, so we are always 19 feet below waterline. So we have to stay away from all the shorelines, shores and sandbanks, shoals and so on, so we don't run on ground. It's run by two engines. We have two propellers astern. We have one engine on port side, one engine on starboard side, and we also have an electric motor ahead of you. The electric motor has 800 horsepower, and I can control it with this stick here. We call it a bow thruster, so we can swing the ship with it in port. We never use it when we're cruising or when we arrive in depart from ports. Each engine has 7,000 horsepower. So we have 14,000 horsepower together, and when we cruise 18.5 knots, we burn 555 gallons of fuel every hour. And that's about 23 gallons for 1 mile. It's not like a car, you get 23 miles up to a gallon. Here we get 23 gallons up to a mile. So it's an expensive cruise you're on. I think we spend about $60,000 on fuel every week. So it's, I hope you enjoy it. Okay, then we have when the ship is listing between 8 and 12, it's my fault. Come up and tell me what we do. He is always on duty, 24 hours a day. I picked the course and the chart, navigation chart, and I give instructions for him. And he steers this way until I enter the course for until he runs around. Subject to ship or shoreline. And it's getting too close. It tells the computer. The computer gives an alarm. And if I don't answer that alarm within a certain amount of seconds, the computer tells the autopilot to change the course. keep clear from the... Wait a minute, that keep helps me looking for ships.
Is this Spartan?
This is Arcas. It's a Danish system. Go in and out the port, and of course you always steer by hand.
Well, it's a little hard to understand the first mate, the assistant captain, but he is giving a very good explanation, and if you were actually present in his section of the ship, you would certainly be able to gain much valuable insight into the mechanics and manipulations of sailing a vessel that's several hundred feet long. Now, most of the equipment in this navigation bridge comes from Europe, some of it made in Sweden, some of it made in Germany, and some of it made in Norway. So you will notice that most of the designations, the nameplates or designation plates, are in foreign languages, such as Swedish, but these people are multilingual. There's the autopilot. In fact, while we were up on the bridge, the ship was being totally controlled by the autopilot. The autopilot was keeping us right on course, very close to course, and we were sailing smoothly without any human assistance. And that, of course, is one of the miracles of modern travel, including the modern jet aircraft. There is an autopilot in there, such as the one we just saw on the MS Bohem. The ship is equipped with all sorts of stabilizers, which we just looked at, and apple juice by Natural Sun. Regular guys up there on the navigation bridge, huh? They drink Natural Sun apple juice. This is the view you get if you are the captain or the navigator of a large cruise ship. And of course, just outside the navigation room are the boats, the rowboats, lifeboats, and there are various vantage points for the crew to view the horizon and keep a visual check of what's around, aside from the radio room where a radar check is constantly maintained as long as the ship is in motion. These are buttons that are pressed to call upon duty officers, staff officers, when any type of emergency situation arises or when they're just needed for assistance on the navigation bridge. Here they tell in English and in German, I believe, how to use the life raft equipment that the ship is equipped with. In addition to the lifeboats, there are several types of life rafts aboard, and all of the necessary instructions are right there in front of the officers for their review and perusal. We hope they never need that alarm, but being on the high seas, such emergency situations do arise, and these people must be thoroughly trained in handling virtually any type of emergency that could arise. Here's a complete schematic or diagram of the MS Bohem, showing where the various sprinklers are, fire detection equipment, where they're located. On and off, it says in German and in English. Normal is the same in German and in English. Well, we must be having network feed troubles again. Well, here are the flags we mentioned very early in this travelogue. Here are the flags of all the different countries that the ship could possibly visit. And the respective flag of the respective country that's being visited is flown in prominence. Okay, we have arrived. We have arrived at the port of Cap Haitian. This is Haiti, and this is our first look at Cap Haitian. We have never been here before. It's really the same island as the Dominican Republic, which we saw earlier, but it's a dictatorship. Baby Doc Duvalier is the lord and master and king of this half of the island. This is his country. He is the law. And his subjects are an impoverished bunch of lads and lassies. Let's listen to their calls now as they ask us to throw money to them. They're hard up for money. They're begging.
I got him. There's two fellows together.
Got him now? No more. No more.
Unfortunately, this is the way many Haitians are forced to earn a living. They ply on the tourists, they beg, they plead for money. Our next installment will show how life really is lived in downtown Cap Haitian, which is where we are visiting right now. For the moment, we are more or less visually exploring the port and dock area, and it isn't too much different than the Dominican Republic, but yet there are marked differences. The language, of course, is Creole and French, whereas in the Dominican Republic, the language was Spanish. And the standard of living is markedly lower here in Cap Haitian and in Haiti in general. Water is often 5 miles away from where people live, potable water, and the country is plagued with dysentery because people constantly are forced to drink polluted water. Before long, we'll be taking a walking tour of Haiti, and we'll gain some insight into what this impoverished nation is all about. But the story of Haiti could never be told in 15 or 20 minutes. It would take more than a book to tell the whole story of this impoverished, dictator-directed country.